Hi again, so this is my second review of the day, and it's going to be a review of T.M.Wright's 1982 book, A Manhattan Ghost Story. There's the cover art, nothing much to say about it, it's just a green face staring out at you. This thing clocks in at 370 pages, and here's the back, which I'll read. It's absolutely intriguing. I'm not going to read this bit of prose there, but I'll start from the synopsis. It says, when Abner Cray comes to Manhattan to make his name as a photographer, he has two strokes of luck. First, his old friend Art, who is in Europe, gives Abner the use of his apartment. Second, who should turn up there but Art's beautiful friend Phyllis? She seems very interested in Abner. Life couldn't be better, it seems. Until, that is, Abner talks to Art, who confesses a terrible crime. He has run away to Europe because he committed murder, and worse is to follow. The person he murdered was Phyllis. So yeah, it sounds great. As someone whose favorite subgenre of horror is ghost stories, I was really looking forward to this, more so because look at all the praise it's received. Stephen King says T.M.Wright is a rare and blazing talent. Dean Koontz thinks he's got a unique imagination. On the back here, there's another quote from Whitley Strieber, of all people, who thinks that T.M.Wright is fast becoming one of the finest modern interpreters of the ghost story. If you don't know who Whitley Strieber is, he wrote a bunch of horror stuff, but he's probably most famous for The Night Church, this thing here, which I'll review at some point. It's a good book. I've never seen his name before on someone else's work, recommending it. But yeah, I mean, this was a major disappointment for me. In my opinion, it fails on two fronts, the two most important fronts of a piece of fiction, and that's plot and style. I'll start with the plot, because there basically isn't one. I mean, it sounds absolutely fascinating there. It sounds such a great premise, and when I finished reading the synopsis on the back there before I read the novel, I was excited. I was starting to imagine how that would play out, what that phone call would be like between Abner and Art when, you know, Abner is like, oh, by the way, your friend Phyllis has turned up. She's been staying in the apartment with me. And Art over there is like, what are you talking about? She's dead. I murdered her. But it doesn't play out like that at all. There's just no reaction to any of it. It seems like that would be some great revelation, but it just falls so flat. It's such an anticlimax. Abner has fallen instantly in love with this Phyllis character. God knows why, because she doesn't have a character. All I know about her is she's called Phyllis, she's black, and she's apparently good in bed. That's all T.M. Wright thinks we need to know about her. And she talks in these vague, cryptic riddles all the time. Yeah, so the characters are wafer thin. There's nothing interesting about the story, what tiny story there is. It can best be summarized as a series of random stuff just happens, and none of it apparently has any wider significance or meaning. The back, again, is kind of misleading because it says there that Phyllis seems very interested in Abner. No, she doesn't. She just appears, she spouts a bunch of nonsensical, pseudo-intellectual claptrap, and then disappears for half the book. Yeah, the characters are just not at all engaging. The story doesn't go anywhere at all, and it doesn't end. The ending it's not even an ending. I don't mind ambiguity in fiction. I quite like it. I mean, one of my favorite films of all time is Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. I have no idea what it's about. I don't know what the ending means, but I have some ideas in it, and I like to express those ideas, and I like, more than that, I like to listen to other people's ideas. I think that's what great art should do. It should get people talking, having conversations, engaging with one another, sharing experiences and opinions. But this isn't that for me. I mean, this isn't an ambiguous ending. This is just a non-ending. This is just confusing dead end to me. So yeah, the plot I didn't like at all, but far more than that is the style. The main reason why I loathed reading this thing. My wife kept asking me why I look in such a bad mood as I was reading it. And it's because it irritated the hell out of me. It's written in this gimmicky, self-consciously intellectual, I guess he thinks, style. To give a couple of examples, there's a lot of dialogue in this book, huge amounts of dialogue. And for some God only known reason, every time characters talk to one another, they always use the person's name in every sentence. So, for example, any page would give me an example of this. But here, for example, it looks like Art and Abner are talking. Here we go, where my finger is. It won't focus, but trust me, it says this. Abner, I might come home early. Jesus, Art, you sound awful. What's she doing in New York, Abner? Art, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I'm talking about the accident, Abner. On and on like that. Every damn bit of dialogue, they're just constantly using each other's names all the time. Why? No idea. when you do something like that, it keeps pushing me out of the story. I can't get involved. I can't slip into the world of this fiction that you're writing. Because you keep on reminding me with this stylized, unrealistic dialogue. You keep reminding me that this isn't real. And when you're writing a ghost stories are inherently unrealistic to begin with, so it becomes more important to help the reader to suspend their disbelief and slip into the world that you're creating. What you don't want to do is create yet more ways of repelling the reader from the world of your story. And when you do this, when you have this bizarre, unnatural dialogue, all it does is remind me that I am reading a piece of writing. I'm not reading a story, I'm reading writing. T.M.Wright, you're making me aware that there is a guy sitting at a typewriter writing this out for me. And if you're going to do that, you might as well just begin every page with, hello, my name is T.M.Wright, and I'm telling you a story. There's every bit as much artistic worth in doing that as there is in what you did here. I mean, there's a very lengthy and boring flashback sequence involving Abner when he was a teenager. He and his friend broke into this what was it? Like a mausoleum thing. And, God, it goes on forever. Nothing ever happens there either. But again, when they talk to each other, his friend is called Sam, every line of dialogue, they reference the guy's name. I'm scared, Sam. Don't be scared, Abner. There's nothing to be scared of, Abner. But I am scared, Sam, because I heard a voice. Sam. No, you didn't, Abner. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely mind-numbingly stupid. I mean, all the characters in this, whether they're teenagers or adults, they all just sound dumb. They sound like morons when they do this. And I'll just repeat, when you do it, it just throws me out of the story. You just remind me yet again that, okay, I'm not reading a story. I'm reading a piece of important writing, apparently, because that's the only reason I can think of why it was there. He probably imagined that this is what literature looks like. And that, I mean, Dean Koontz there, he says that this guy's got a unique imagination. Being charitable to T.M.Wright, this book was written in 1982. Maybe then this did have some originality to it, because it deals with that whole sixth sensey idea of, would the living really know if they were dead and vice versa? Who really is alive and who's dead? Maybe in 1982 there was some originality to that. So I'm not going to criticize it for that reason. That would be completely wrong to compare it to later works which dealt with the same theme, because this came before them. But I personally don't care how original an idea is if the telling of the idea is so off-putting. And that's my main criticism of this book is the style. I've already mentioned the stupid dialogue. Another thing he does here, why I didn't read that little bit of prose on the back there, is because it would only raise my blood pressure again, because for some weird reason he keeps on rewriting the same passage, the same paragraph throughout the book. He'll write a paragraph, and he's obviously very pleased with what he's done, because further on down the line, he'll insert it again into the narrative, almost word for word, the same thing. He just keeps repeating it over and over again. Why? No idea. If he wanted to make some point about the cyclical, disorienting nature of life and death, firstly, that's obvious. You don't need to make that point. But secondly, it can be done much better than this gimmick that you're doing. So, yeah, I mean, style is a purely subjective thing. You either like it or you don't. As you can tell, I really hated this way that it's written. And I just want to give a bit of a tangent here to explain a little bit about me as a reader, what I don't like in fiction. This new modern trend, you may have noticed it, of referring to certain horror films as elevated horror. So, stuff like Hereditary, Get Out, Us, The Witch, The Lighthouse. Film critics who write for intellectual organs like The Guardian or The New York Times, God forbid they should ever allow themselves to enjoy a horror film or to find artistic worth or merit in a horror film. So they've had to coin for themselves a new phrase, elevated horror, I guess so that they can sleep better at night in their intellectual smugness. I've never heard the word elevated applied to any other genre. I've never heard of an elevated romance film or an elevated historical drama. Elevated action film. It's only lowly horror that they felt the need to, sanitize in some way, feel better about enjoying it by giving it a different title of elevated horror. So the point I'm making here is that this type of thing, A Manhattan Ghost Story by T.M.Wright, it's the prose version of an elevated horror film. All those films I just mentioned happen to be great, but the filmmakers didn't set out to self-consciously create a work of art. It just happened to be that. What they wanted to do was tell a story. They had a passion to tell a story. And I don't get that sense from this book that the guy wanted to tell a story. It's an exercise. It's just a bland exercise in style, and I get the feeling that he was trying to write for the ages here. You know, he sat down and told himself, "I'm going to try and produce a piece of good writing to compensate for the fact that I don't have a story to tell, or at least I don't know how to tell this story." You know, all the great works of literature. Think of Great Expectations by Dickens. I mean, it's a work of art, but it's also, first and foremost, one hell of a good story. Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. It's a profound work of art, but it just happens to be that. It wasn't the point of it. First and foremost, it's one hell of a great story. And that's what I don't like. It's when I find it just patronizing and honestly a little bit childish when a writer tries to impress, self-consciously tries to impress with his style. There is no reason for this book to be written the way that it is written. When I finished it, I wanted to rewrite it the way that I think that it could have been, because it's such a great premise. It has so much promise. Now, this, not to appeal to other people here, but when I finished reading this, I asked myself, is it just me? Like, maybe I missed something here? So I did what I usually do. I went to the review sites like Goodreads and Amazon, and not that this gives any more credibility to what I'm saying, to my opinion. I was just personally happy to see that it's not just me. That huge number of people had exactly the same reaction to this. It's got a rating of 3 stars on Amazon, which is basically negative, because when you have a book which has many, many reviews and it averages at 3, you have to bear in mind you've got all those meaningless one-line 5-star reviews by people who write stuff like, "I bought this as a gift from my boyfriend, so I'm giving it 5 stars." It's when you get to the negative stuff, the 1- and 2-star reviews, that people start to take the time and effort to lay out their opinion. And sure enough, I mean, people had basically the same reaction as me. Again, that doesn't mean that what I'm saying is gospel. I'm just saying I was happy to know it's not just me. I'm also quite wary when I see a book with all of this like praise from King and Kuntz, but it's a book that barely anyone remembers, certainly never talks about anymore. It tells me that maybe it was some kind of industry backslapping going on, some kind of "I'll praise you if you praise me," because 1982, all these guys were just basically getting started. So yeah, I'm going to wrap this up. I don't have a great deal more to say about it. It's just that the plot did nothing for me. I found it completely dull, and I found the style to be incredibly pretentious and off-putting and finally empty. Just it was a very soulless experience for me reading this. I was never interested. I was never excited. Certainly never scared by it. This is barely a horror novel, by the way. There's nothing creepy about it. Stryber on the back of this found it a chilling read. I don't know what. But again, if you have read this and you like it, I would love to hear your opinion, because it is just my opinion, and it doesn't mean that it's the right one. It's just an opinion. So that's going to do it. Thank you for listening to this. It's barely a review, is it? It's been more of a rant, but thanks for listening to it if you did listen to it. I'll be back soon with another review. Until then, take care of yourselves, and bye for now.